Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, pushback to the new provincial wine tax. But first, from addressing health system capacity concerns to clearing the way for private betting platforms, Unruly airline passengers, and the pit putting a spotlight on our province. Let's kick off the program with our Primetime This Week panel. And joining us this evening, Tom Keenan, professor in the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape at the University of Calgary, also the author of Techno Creep, and Darren Krause, editor and founder of Livewire Calgary. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with government response to growing calls for a health system lifeline, with 16 of Alberta's largest hospitals over capacity. And for the first time since a 44-year-old man died after waiting for more than 8 hours in an Edmonton emergency room, the Minister of Hospital and Surgical Services took questions from media Thursday. His message: assistance is coming, but it won't be in the form of a state of emergency.
We have all tools and authority necessary to manage the system. We can, of course, do better, and we will learn and do better. But I think the teams from the hospitals all the way up to the agencies and even my department officials have done fantastic work.
Now, the government says, along with a new physician position being created to help hospital triage, the focus moving forward will be on accelerated discharges and spreading out patients to facilities that can handle the load.
They have finally decided to put a doctor at the triage desk just so people don't die in the waiting room again. That's an admission the system is in absolute crisis mode.
This isn't just a flu season problem. Right now we're seeing a lot of stalling, delaying, and promises that years from now there will be more acute care hospital beds.
The government has also ordered a fatality inquiry into the emergency room death of Prashanth Srikumar over the holidays. That report will aim to find out more about the circumstances and may contain recommendations to prevent similar situations in the future. Tom, it was December 22nd, the 44-year-old Edmonton resident died waiting to see a doctor about his chest pain. Surprised it took until Thursday for one of the four ministers responsible for health to come to the podium.
Yeah, they've got one job, which is to be accountable to the people, and you would have thought that they would have done it a lot sooner. It's obviously a very, very tragic situation. One thing that crossed my mind, and maybe you guys have some insight into this, there are these things called primary care networks. So if you're bleeding or if you have chest pain, yes, you should go to the hospital. But if it's something else and your doctor's not available, I don't know why more people aren't using that. 92% of Alberta doctors are in one of the PCNs. And I did use one once, and it was good. I mean, I saw a doctor in a different office who I had never met before, but I got the prescription I needed. So I think maybe the population of Alberta needs to adjust their attitude a bit and not run to the ER for every little sniffle.
Darren, what do you make of the government's response to the call that's been coming from doctors over the past week or more for the declaration of a state of emergency over hospitals being over capacity? How likely is this response to quell Albertans' concerns?
Well, first off, I think the doctors wanting a state of emergency is almost like the plea for some sort of help, and if you make that big plea, then perhaps there will be action taken. But the reality is the province actually has the tools. They've just obfuscated them. I mean, we've created a three-headed monster in health right now, and now that these things are happening, we've got a whole bunch of band-aid solutions here. We all know what's going to happen if we continue to use Band-Aids to cover up major wounds, and it's not going to turn out well. The one good development that has happened today, and if for no other reason than to provide Albertans a snapshot of what's happening, is the province did launch a dashboard today that kind of gives Albertans some really good detail into how the Alberta healthcare system is performing. And at least to that end, we should be able to hold them to account.
Tom, it used to be AHS. Now it's an entity with four separate elements. How do you see the overhaul of Alberta's health system faring through the developments we've seen the past few weeks?
They just keep trying and they never seem to get it right. I mean, there was the whole fiasco with the labs and they lost a huge amount of money on that. They don't seem to be very well managed. I will say I've seen worse. I was in a New Orleans emergency room with my wife who had a toe infection soon after Katrina. And there were people coming in who literally were bleeding. And the protocol down there was take a clipboard, write what's wrong with you, and drop it in the golden mailbox. It was literally called the golden mailbox. And then someone behind bulletproof glass would look at it. So I guess I would have to say there are worse things in the world than Alberta's emergency rooms, but we definitely need improvement.
All right, next up, the Alberta government's move to regulate the iGaming industry as it opens the door to private betting platforms. Meet Calgary radio host Jesse Motz. He's managed to quit online gambling, but remains vocal about its impact.
I expect there to be tons more people with gambling issues as the years go on, with just how in your face it is.
Government-owned Play Alberta is the only licensed site in our province. However, it only captures roughly 30% of the market, with the rest going to offshore companies who don't always have to play by Canadian rules.
We're not bringing online gambling to the province. It's already here. And so sticking our head in the sand and pretending that it's not there isn't going to make it better.
So the Alberta government is preparing to implement regulations that establish time and betting limits and banning athletes from promoting gambling.
The one that we are probably the most proud of is we are going to have system-wide self-exclusion on day one.
That exclusion rule would allow Albertans to ban themselves from online and in-person betting.
That is ultimately the solution to the problem. It's you, it's not me, it's not the government. You got to make the decision for yourself.
Recent Canadian reporting suggests 1 in 3 young adults gamble online, and of those aged 18 to 29, almost 24% experienced a high level of gambling-related harms, including credit card debt or savings losses. Darren, the new regulations are expected to take hold in late spring, so not too far off. But what's to be made of how the Alberta government is approaching its embrace of private betting platforms?
Well, I do appreciate that they are taking some steps. I mean, some of the rules are pretty boilerplate overall. It's just a question, you know, similar to social media sites and some of the legislation we've seen around the world in terms of social media sites and having youth being able to be involved. I think taking those steps is really, really important. But I think the problem actually goes beyond the legalized gambling sites, and that is all of those little sites that allow young people to bet with fake money or with points. And it's almost a grooming of future bettors. And I think the government really needs to take a look at how that impacts youth and how it leads to people getting into the online gambling moving forward.
Tom, how far do you see the concept of self-exclusion going to curbing the harms of online gambling?
People are going to find ways around that. They'll create multiple accounts. I'll never forget, I had a student who wrote a paper called, "If you can't spot the sucker in an online poker room, you are the sucker." And he wouldn't tell me how much money he was up in real money, but in fake money, he was up $600,000. What did he do? He would play multiple hands using technology. He would have a video camera on a monitor somewhere. People are very ingenious. If they are addicted to gambling, they're going to find a way to do this. And, you know, it's even worse in Australia because down there, they bet on cockroach races.
All right. Time for us to take a bit of a break. But when we come back, contending with disruptive airline passengers and a hit television show puts a surprise spotlight on an Indigenous historical site right here in our province. More from our Primetime This Week panel in a moment. Welcome back. It would seem Calgary leads the country when it comes to unruly passengers disrupting flights.
There are many inconsiderate travelers, and this one takes the cake.
Calgarian Tony Martins was on an Air Canada flight heading to Paris when the aircraft had to put down for the removal and arrest of an intoxicated male.
The captain said, some of you might be noticing that we are dumping fuel, and we had to take an emergency landing in St. John's.
Now, Canadian Airlines reported 114 such incidents last year, ranging from refusal to sit during landings to smoking, fighting, indecent exposure. And Calgary leads the way. Flights arriving and departing from Calgary, from YYC. On the airline front, WestJet, meanwhile, nearly 60% of the reports.
WestJet has unfortunately had a shift in its corporate culture, a shift in its training, a shift in the attitude on board, and that shows.
Now, WestJet says it's already taking a zero-tolerance policy, stating cabin crews are extensively trained to de-escalate situations and that it issues written and verbal warnings while also reserving the right to suspend guests up to and including a lifetime ban. Some aviation experts suggest taking it a step further.
You take a 777 or a 330 airplane and you basically divert the airplane, dump fuel. That's a $100,000 job. That's a $100,000 cost. You send that bill to the passenger.
And at the end of the day, it's other passengers who pay the price of delays and missed flights. Okay, so Tom, how does the suggestion of harsher penalties, like billing an unruly passenger for the costs incurred, how does that land with you?
Well, I guess they'd be an indentured servant for the rest of their life if they had to pay for that. You know, the worst behavior I've seen is clipping toenails and things like that. But I do have a bit of a theory about this. Alcohol may be a factor. I heard of this legendary Flair flight that was diverted several times, and they served a drink on each thing, and it got to be pretty rowdy. So I looked into some of the policies. I mean, I don't know how good the bartenders are at the Calgary Airport bar, but in the lounges, for example, it takes a lot to get cut off. I think the automated cutoff in the elevation lounge at Calgary is after 5 drinks. So if you go in there and belt back 5 drinks, you're probably ready for a tussle by the time you find your way to the plane.
Well, Darren, Edmonton, we saw the list. Edmonton, number 5 there last year, with 9 related disruptions. But what's your read on why Calgary captured top honors? Because that number read 45.
Well, it's a great question. I mean, one would say maybe there's a sense of entitlement. Maybe we like to drink a little bit. But the reality is, I mean, especially when you tie a bunch of the data together and you realize that WestJet is got 60% of these issues. Calgary is one of WestJet's hubs for a lot of connecting flights. So it's not necessarily Calgarians here that we should be singling out, of course. I think it's just that Calgary is a spot where a lot of flights come in from all points, and this is where they congregate for WestJet flights, and that probably has a large part to do with all of this. All sorts of personalities coming through, and as a result, maybe they grab a drink and they connect their flights elsewhere, and we have some of these problems pop up.
Indeed. Okay.
Good point there, because WestJet flies from a lot of resort destinations. And I know we were on a flight from Las Vegas, and my wife was a retired nurse, was called upon to care for a woman who clearly had too much before she got on. So you might be right there, and it might be the places that WestJet is coming from.
There we go. All right, one more topic, and that is some unexpected international attention for a notable destination in our province, thanks to a scene in the season 2 premiere of the HBO Max medical drama, The Pit, last week.
Where are you going?
Head smashed in Buffalo Jump.
Captain Crunch flying squirrel socks. Are we talking in code, or are you having a stroke?
It's an Aboriginal UNESCO heritage site in Alberta.
We had no idea. It was a pleasant surprise.
Nestled at the foot of the Rockies, the historical Indigenous site showcases where the Blackfoot people use their knowledge of buffalo behavior.
We pride ourselves on being stewards of a sacred site. Bring more understanding of what the Southern Alberta landscape has to offer, and more specifically what Head Smashed In has to offer in terms of the ancient buffalo hunt and the culture of the Blackfoot people.
While it's unclear how writers of the show ended up referencing the site, it's already prompted a response by visitors.
We watched The Pit. We love it. It's a great show. Big fans of ER, big fans of No While. Completely referenced out of the blue. Got us really excited, so we came down for the day.
And the pit has quite the reach, having recently won several Golden Globes, including Best Television Series for Drama. Darren, how cool is that for a shout-out? Especially considering Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump is set to celebrate 40 years of operation next year.
Well, as a native Albertan, I begrudgingly say that despite the fact that I've driven by the sign so many times, I've actually never been there. So to hear that it's on something like the pits I think it's super cool. It's a treasured historical site that gets a mention on one of the more popular dramas on television right now. I think I, like many others, will go, hey, that probably makes me want to go and take a look, and really helps drive Alberta's Indigenous tourism industry. I think it's nothing but great news for the province.
Well, and Tom, Travel Alberta also featuring a scene in a video that it's put to social media. Is this just one of those opportunities that can't be missed? What do you make of the attention?
Absolutely. Unlike Darren, I'm not a native Albertan, and I've been there multiple times because that's where I take people. You know, if somebody comes up from New York or something, they want to see something different. They don't want to see the Calgary Tower. They want to see something Indigenous. And the other thing I recall about taking them down there is they all spend money in the gift shop because they have authentic handicrafts in there, as opposed to the kind of things you might get in one of the gift shops on Banff Avenue.
All right, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. We're out of time. Great to see you both. Hope you have an awesome weekend.
Thank you.
You too, Michael. Thank you.